I'm going to move in here. We're going to finish talking about World War II battles. Now, I go to this vacation spot quite frequently, and this is something I found out, and so I'm going to share it with you. It's cool. I'm a history nerd. I don't care. It's what it is. This is Carabel, Florida. It's a beach, maybe, I'm trying to get this right, maybe 2 hours outside of Panama City. It's kind of a public beach. You pull up, you can go out there for the day if you live close. Now, at this beach, right around 1942-43, they start planning something. Remember, we're going to have to invade the western front of France, and so we'll talk about what it is. They set up barracks, and they began to train for something. They have a museum, and this is what they were training for. As you can see, they had little boats, and they would float these boats up, and the people would basically run out of them. Now, what on earth could this be? Why are they doing this? Now, they never told them what they were doing. They never told them they could be part of some big. They were just training. Okay? And we'll come back to that one. Now, as this happens, we have another conference. There's actually a ton of conferences. I'm skipping over some, actually. The one I want to talk about here is called the Tehran Conference. At the Tehran Conference, we have Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin. They come known as the Big Three. We'll get that in a second. At Tehran, two things are discussed. Number one, they kind of further resolve in unconditional surrender, and they make a deal. And the deal is, we're going to take out the Germans in Europe first. They seem to be the biggest threat. And then we're going to take out the Japanese in the Pacific. So what Stalin asked is for Roosevelt to commit American troops to the Western Front and defeat Hitler. If he does this, Stalin then promises to bring in troops to kind of help out with the Japanese. Now, what happens here is that Roosevelt does commit first, Stalin does not, and this kind of tension leads to the Cold War. The Cold War is starting right here. Okay? Who is that? And so we'll get into that a little bit more. All right? The second thing discussed here is an idea called Operation Overlord. Ooh, that's fun, right? What is Operation Overlord? Operation Overlord is the invasion of Normandy. It's the invasion of France. Okay? And so that's the main thing I need you to understand there, is that Operation Overlord is the code name given for the invasion of Normandy. All right. Now again, if we need to go back here real quick and get these people, when I talk to them about anything else after this point, I call them Big Three. Big Three are Soviet Union, United States, and England. Now I'm saying that because the people change. FDR dies in 44, Stalin's out by 45, 46. And even Churchill's gone at one point. And so we have to look at how that's affected, okay? Stalin's still there, sorry. I got ahead of myself. But Roosevelt will pass away. Okay? Now, notice again the Big Three, correct? So we have Operation Overlord, Big Three, what are they planning? Okay? For the invasion of Normandy, for Operation Overlord, the head commander. Now, understand, this is not just, if we go back to the invasion map, let me get to that here in 1 second, right here. You notice Canadian flag, English flag, American flag. There's many things, right? And we've nicknamed the beaches. We have Utah, we have Omaha, we have Gold, we have Juneau, we have Sword. Now, I really want to pay attention to Utah, especially this 4th Infantry Division, and I'll tell you why here in a second. Okay? So notice it's that. Now, the commander put in charge of all of that, of Operation Overlord, is an American general named Dwight D. Eisenhower. He later becomes president, and that shows you how much they respect this man, okay? So he's put in charge of all this. He's the one that designs all this. He's the one that was telling these. Now, why did they pick him? If you remember those little training of the beaches where we went to the beach there in Carabel, Florida, and they were practicing to get out of the boats, Eisenhower was kind of in charge of that. He was the one saying that would happen. Now, the American platoons were put under the command of General Omar Bradley. Now, Omar Bradley, I don't think I have it on here. I don't. Omar Bradley is kind of remembered for being a good general as well. It's a 4-star, you can tell by his thing there, and they actually have something called the Bradley Assault Vehicle. He was more kind of a ground guy. So his Eisenhower is the one in charge of amphibious warfare, getting them off the boat, and once they get off the boat, Bradley is the one telling them where they're supposed to go and the tactics, okay? Now, what makes this so difficult is because everything here in yellow is what they call the Atlantic Wall. Now, what is the Atlantic Wall? The Atlantic Wall was probably the most ingenious weapon the Nazis had. As they took over this thing here, they basically blocked out. They knew that the Allies would try to invade, and so they blocked it out, and they built these massive gun turrets. See it? They built stuff like this. Now, these are called pillboxes, and so the Germans would get into the pillboxes like this, and they would start firing at the beaches. They knew it was going to happen. Okay? Now, it actually went as far as Rommel was put in charge of this a few weeks before the actual invasion. And they didn't know about the invasion. And Rommel said, no, we need anti-tank traps. I know these guys have amphibious warfare. And they didn't really listen. Okay? So the Atlantic Wall refers to the fortification of the outward Atlantic by the Nazis to prevent some type of invasion. Okay? Now, I've set you up long enough. What happens? On June 6, 1944, this is the site, this is the scene here of much afterwards, after the carnage has stopped. June 6, 1944 is commonly referred to as D-Day. It's what they were practicing here, and it's what they practiced on this beach that I saw. Here is the actual sign if you go, and it tells you, right, World War II D-Day training site. 1943, Carabel Beach and Dog Island were part of the U.S. 4th Infantry. If you remember, I said pay attention to the 4th Infantry on that map. They were the ones who stormed Utah Beach. They were one of the first one there. Camp Gordon Johnson, it was extracted a small amount of soil from the site, and it was delivered to the 4th Infantry Association and placed in the monument in Arlington, Virginia. Since they were kind of there, this was a lot of the carnage thing that happened, and a lot of them really didn't make it out. So June 6, 1944 is commonly referred to as the D-Day invasion. It's the invasion of Normandy. Okay? It's the invasion of France. It's what Dwight D. Eisenhower was in charge of, Omar Bradley, and it's the other date I really want you to remember here. Now, something that's of interesting note. How did we beat the Atlantic Wall? How did we get through there? Well, prior to this happening, if you remember another really good general is General Patton, and I didn't say Patton was here, did I? Where the heck is Patton? Now, in your packet, he actually writes a letter to his wife, and he explains what had happened. Dwight D. Eisenhower knew that Rommel would want revenge on Patton, that the Nazis would want revenge on Patton for what he had done. So he puts Patton in charge of something called Operation Quicksilver. So Operation Quicksilver is part of Operation Overlord. It is part of D-Day. But it's also kind of weird. Should you be able to lift a tank? What happened? Operation Quicksilver is a fake invasion. What Eisenhower counted on is that he puts Patton at the other locations, like closest to Britain. He puts all these inflatable tanks out there at night, hoping the Germans will move a little bit of their people, which they did, further down. And so General Patton is the decoy. And he tells his wife in the letter there he really didn't like that. He didn't care much for that. But nonetheless, it was a success. And so now we have infiltrated, and we're pushing the Nazis back on three sides. We're pushing them back from the bottom, from Italy. The Russians, the Soviets are pressing them back, and then of course us and the English are pressing them back from the west. And so we're going to squeeze them in. And in 1945, things get really kind of endish for both sides here. But hopefully I didn't really confuse you there. If you ever have a chance to go through Carabel, Florida, it's really cool. There's a museum. It's for free. Camp Gordon Johnson's off the beaten path. And it was a POW camp. It was a barrack, and really, really cool stuff there. They have some old newspapers, and it's done by donation only. So if you do go, donate, because otherwise these stories are going to die out. That no one's ever going to realize that the beach you're playing on in the summer was, practice for something where people paid the ultimate cost for the American flag, put a little bit more red in it, and so have a little respect for that. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is the home front, what happened here in the United States during World War II.